Everybody, this is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore, and it is always a treat to have Mike Lawson with us. Great to have you back. I know we were talking with some of the people here, and we were talking about the addictive quality of your DeMarco books and how much we enjoy them. This new one is terrific, The Asset. And anyway, let's give Mike a nice warm welcome. Poison Pen.
I'm just glad to be here. There's four guys I work with, and we come down here and play golf every year at this time of year. And it just turns out to be perfect because, you know, the books happen to arrive at the same time. And so I couldn't have asked for anything better than that. It actually came almost right from the golf course. It's probably the way I look, the way I've been doing, sitting there smoking cigars and drinking beer in a golf cart all day. So anyway, excuse that.
Now, you know, your books, they mix lots of different elements. You know, they're thrillers, they're sort of beltway intrigue in a lot of ways. This is book number 19, I think?
19 in the DeMarco series.
Right, right. Mm-hmm. And so the first one came out when? 2004, I think it was?
2005. Yeah.
2005.
Yeah.
Okay, so what a remarkable 20 years in D.C. to be covering.
Lucky. Well, you know, I don't know how many of you know the background on this, on writing these books. I decided I wanted to, you know, to write novels, and I liked the books by like Robert B. Parker, you know, and McDonald, and I wanted to write a series. But the first thing I decided was I wanted it set in D.C. only because there's so much stuff that happens back there. Now, these books don't stay in D.C. They bounce all over the country, but because of the way D.C. is, it's just a target-rich environment for a writer. There's always something goofy or sometimes heroic or just things that are going on back there. I've never had a hard time coming up with an idea for another story, and almost all these books, you know, are not all of them. Most of them are based on something I just happened to see or read, or my wife points out. You know, one of the books was a article in Vanity Fair, had to do with drug testing in third world countries. I said, oh, that's an idea. You know, and one book was inspired by the no-fly zone around D.C. Some goofball goes and flies right into the no-fly zone, and the jets take off from Andrews. And I said, oh, there's an idea. You know, and this book, I guess, was inspired in a way by Senator McConnell, who happens to be married to a woman from Taiwan. She was born in Taiwan, Elaine Chao, his wife. And the books aren't about, you know, his politics or anything, but what struck me about it was, well, geez, what if the guy who's the Republican leader of the Senate, who's married to a Chinese woman, and what if they had somebody decide to make her be a spy? And so that was where the whole idea came from, was some dumb, simple thing like that. And so all the books are like that. It's just something you hear and it just sort of pops into your head. And so far I've been able to string it out for 19 books.
Well, it seems like the challenge would be, you know, to match the truth of what's actually going on in D.C., you know? It's crazier than any fiction you could write, right?
Yeah, it's always... In fact, I think when I was talking to Barb last time, it says, you know, you're almost not worried about going over the top these days. You know, it's almost hard to come up with something that says, oh, no, that would never happen. Well, it probably would.
Yeah, there is no top anymore.
Yeah, I know. You know, the hardest part of these books is the timing in terms of what's going on in reality. You know, because time moves on. I write a book, and it's going to be 2 years before the book is actually published. And the book that's coming out that I just turned into to my agent, it has to do with the war in Israel and Gaza and that kind of thing. Well, I'm writing it today in 2025. The book's going to be published in 2027. And so I don't have a clue what's going to happen in the next 2 years. And that's been a challenge with a lot of these books is, you know, you take a stab at something and say, well, this is the current environment. Is what I'm writing going to sound really dumb, you know, 2 years from now? You know, the example I was always given is the person who decides to write about the capture of Osama bin Laden. You go and write your book, and the next thing you know, well, shoot, that didn't work out too well. You know, so.
How correct have you been? Have you been mostly accurate?
You know, the where I've been mostly accurate is that guy Mahoney is I made him the Speaker of the House. Well, and I made him a Democrat only because this guy, he looks like Tip O'Neill. He comes from Boston. And when I tried writing the very first book, I was trying to avoid, you know, the political party. So I was writing that party, this party, the other party. And I said, well, screw it, you know, pick one. And so I picked Mahoney being a Democrat in Boston, and I made him the Speaker of the House. Well, as time has gone along, you've had, you know, because of the whimsy of the electorate, you know, one time it's a Republican, then it's a Democrat. Well, I've been pretty good at guessing when Mahoney's going to get fired and reelected again so far. I think in this book, I made him he's the minority leader, I think. The next one, I think I get him reelected again. I hope I'm right about that. So, I mean, I hope I'm right just for the sake of the book.
I mean, I'm sure most of you here have read some of Mike's books, but can you give us kind of the basic setup of Joe, like where Joe comes from, this interesting relationship he has with Mahoney and...
Yeah, that was like I said, when I first started writing, I was, I wanted this setting in D.C., and I wanted to write a series, and the next thing was coming up with a protagonist. And I didn't want to make him a detective because there are already too many good detectives, and I didn't want to make him a cop, and I didn't want to make him a lawyer, and so I came up with this idea of making him a fixer for a vaguely corrupt politician. And in some of the books, there's a lot of the background. DeMarco, his father was a hitman for the old Italian mob. The only reason he got a job with Mahoney is because Mahoney had an affair with his godmother, and she basically blackmails Mahoney into hiring the guy. And then DeMarco, in a lot of ways, is kind of like me. He likes to play golf. He's lazy. If you look at the books, I mean, the way he reacts to situations is essentially the way I react, which is what makes it easy for me to write, because I don't have to do a whole lot of work on the character. And then Mahoney, like I said, I wanted a sort of corrupt politician. I don't want to make him, all bad. And then there's a third character called Emma that is in some of these books, and in a lot of ways she's a device. I wanted to have an inroad into big organizations back in D.C., the Pentagon, CIA, DEA, DIA, and so I made her a former DIA employee. But like I said, it was a device in a sense, but also she's more morally upright than DeMarco is, so she can kind of slap him aside the head when he's going to go off in the wrong way.
Yeah, kind of classic sidekick foil character.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and she's largely off stage for this book.
Yeah, she's off stage
because she's recovering.
Yeah, I got her shot in the last book, and so she's not recovered yet. And that's the other thing that happens with these books,
So DeMarco himself, he is an attorney by...
Yeah, he's got a law degree.
He's got a law degree, but it provides a good sort of cover for him in some ways.
Yeah, he can pretend to be a lawyer, but he's not really, never been a lawyer.
And so theoretically, he has this little basement office, and theoretically he's available to everybody in the building, but he's really not.
Yeah, his job, if his job title, he's supposedly a lawyer for the House. It would be available to all members, but the only thing he's available to do is Mahoney. One interesting thing about DeMarco's got an office in the sub-basement of the Capitol. When I first wrote this series, this was pre-9/11, and I went back to D.C. and I'm basically looking for Joe's office. And pre-9/11, I walked into the Capitol. I think I don't remember there being a metal detector. I'm sure there must have been one, but I walked into the Capitol. You go in the rotunda, and you can just kind of wander all over the place. And there was over to the side, there was a set of stairs, a little blue rope across it. Well, I walk over to it, nobody's looking. I step over the blue rope and I walk down the stairs. And then I go down another level and I'm in the sub-basement. And down there they had an emergency diesel generator room and a printing room, and there's a little office over there. I said, well, there's DeMarco's office. But what was so striking about it was compared to the last time I was at the Capitol, I mean, you all can understand what that's like now. I mean, the whole West Side terrace there were guys there with weapons, and the sawhorses in front, and the only way you could get into the Capitol is going on a tour, and you only see one floor of the building unless you knew somebody. but that stark difference between how easy it was to walk into the Capitol to find Joe's office, compared to today, I've never forgotten that. But anyway, that's why his office is in the sub-basement of the Capitol.
He's down there with his red stapler, right?
Yeah.
One thing I always love, and some of you can weigh in here, is the cast of these misfits and ne'er-do-wells that he surrounds himself with. They all have special skills, like in the new book, Sergio and what's the other one's name?
Yeah, in all these books, I mean, you need, like there's one guy, it seems
Javier.
like today and almost, what's that?
Javier.
Yeah, Javier and Sergio in the book were just people that this character Emma knew from her days back in the DIA down from South America. Well, they basically just needed a couple of bodyguards, and these guys were bodyguard material. And one of the characters I've struggled with how to write it differently over the years. There's a character called Neil, because I need somebody that's got the IT skills to go and research stuff and things like that. And it's another problem with the series is you're writing the same description of the same character in every book, and you just know the reader. If you read a lot of them, you just start flipping by that stuff. I mean, 'cause I can't figure out a different way to say it. But,
Well, what else can you tell us about this? Because they're kind of two different cases going on at the same time.
well, yeah, I mean, the main story is a spy story where the Republican leader of the Senate, his wife is compromised. And it turns out, well, you have to read the book for that part, but she's compromised, and it appears that she's an asset for the Chinese. And there's a minor backstory of a kind of a goofy political person who's kind of harassing Mahoney, and then she does something really stupid. And part of DeMarco's job is to go get something on her to help, basically, hopefully, get her out of a job because she's annoying. But that's just something else is going on while the main story is going on.
Right. And there's the homeless veteran who gets.
Well, no, the homeless veteran was part of the plot in the sense that
Yep.
somebody had to get ran over, and it was him. Sorry about that, but
He was in the wrong street at the wrong time. Right?
wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit. Some of you may know some of your backstory, but you were a nuclear engineer. Is that correct?
Yeah. I had a real job once upon a time.
You say you're lazy, but here you cranked out 23 books in the same number of years.
When I had a job, I worked for the Naval Nuclear Power Program. Some of you may be old enough to know who Admiral Rickover is. Well, Rickover is the head of the so-called father of the atomic submarine. And I went to work for that program right out of college. I was hired into the nuke program at a naval shipyard. And in the course of my career, I was actually interviewed by Rickover and spent a couple of years back in D.C. working at headquarters back there. We were doing design work on the Nimitz class carriers at the time. And then I came back to the shipyard, and in my last job, I was in charge of the nuclear program back there as the head of nuclear engineering. And that was a real job. I mean, it was 12, 14 hours a day. It was weekends. It was nights. There was the last couple of years, I can't remember a night that went by that I didn't get a phone call in the middle of the night. There's some issue going on one of the ships, and it was serious stuff. I mean, you're dealing with potentials for radiological accidents, and if you screw something up, people can die. Now you go from that, and I sit there and in the morning I get up and I write about Joe. I mean, this isn't work. I mean, I wake up about 5 o'clock in the morning because I'm just an early riser, and by 9 or 10 o'clock I'm done and I go play golf. So like I said, I've never felt like this was a job. It's fun for me. So I hope that comes across in the book too. But I actually have a good time writing the books, and like I said, I feel lucky that I've just been able to do this as long as I have so far.
Well,
one of these days, Grove will wake up and fire me, but
no, I mean, the books are addictive, and they have that wonderful laconic sense of humor that we've come to know and love. How long does it take you to write a book?
That's one of those it depends things. The one I just turned in, the one that had to do with the Israeli war going on, that took me forever to write. the first thing I did is I started to write a different book, and I got about 2 months into it, and even it was boring me, and so I said, all right, this isn't going to work, and so I scrapped it. And then this other one, I don't know why, but it just took me almost a good year to write it. The one I'm currently working on right now, I've only been working on it for about a month, and I've already got it's about half done. I mean, just sometimes it just comes easy, and other times it just like the book I just turned in. There were parts of it that just didn't sound right, and sitting there agonizing over, this just isn't any good. And so you fiddle and fart around with it until you finally get it, as best you can make it. Then you say, all right, I give up. At some point you're just putting, lipstick on the pig. And then it's time to mail it in.
Now, I understand with getting into the espionage world and the spy game, that there's been a real return to like old school tradecraft these days because people are, technology is a blessing and a curse in that world.
Well, one of the curses, you can't find a payphone anymore.
Yeah.
In fact, in this book, I had to struggle. I actually had to go find one online to go find one. Joe had to drive around for hours to find one, but you have to figure out something else in the next one.
How do you kind of keep up with some of those details? Do you have some sources that you use when you need to?
Well, yeah. I mean, one thing I think every writer does, you try to be accurate, because when you're not, you hear about it. My very first book, the one you were holding there, I made a gun mistake. So you can probably email me this, because I got emailed by every gun nut in the world. I made this gun mistake.
It wasn't the Glock safety, was it?
Not going to talk about it. I made it. So after, and you don't want to do that. And so I do the research. In fact, every book has probably got a mistake in it, and when I make a mistake, it's because I think I know something. I don't know why I knew it, but I just knew it, and it turned out to be wrong. If I don't know something, I look it up. But as far as experts go, in the gun book, I know a guy named Roger, and Roger worked with me at the shipyard, and Roger's got enough weapons to invade Canada. And so on the next book, I called up Roger one day, and I said, Roger, I need the name of a shotgun. Any old shotgun will do that fires fast. Roger goes, oh, hell, come over to my place. Roger also makes his own whiskey. So we go over to Roger's house, and he brings out some shotgun. We blow apart some sapling in his backyard, and so Roger became my gun guy. There's 2 doctors I know. I call them up, and there's a medical. In one of the books, I gave Mahoney a gallbladder operation, I think. I call up Dr. One, and I say, hey, read this paragraph. And, I looked up this, see if it sounds right. And he read it and said, yeah, sounds okay to me. We go to a book signing, and Dr. Two shows up and says, love the book, except the medical stuff was all screwed up. I got lawyers. A good friend of mine, a judge, just passed away. He's helped in a lot of the books. So the answer is, yeah, on I think it's the book before this, some of my buddies are big boat guys. And I remember, call them up to get boat advice, which I did like in the last book, Untouchable. And then today it's because of, Google Maps and YouTube, it's just easier to do research. YouTube is kind of amazing. In one of not a DeMarco book, it's one of my Kay Hamilton books, a little part of the book was set in Afghanistan, and I didn't want to go to Afghanistan to research this thing. And all I needed to go was from Kabul to Kandahar. You get on YouTube, here's 2 guys driving down the road jabbering. I don't know what language they're talking in, but I could just see everything. One of the books, I think in this one, was set in part of Kentucky. Same thing, you go on YouTube, and there's these folks driving. I can just see everything on YouTube because people film that for some reason. So it's made, on the first book, you're in a library, flipping open maps and finding photographs. And now it's just so much simpler to be able to see stuff. But,
you also have a memorable hog butcher character named Mookie in this book.
I don't know how I came up with the name of Mookie.
It seems to fit him.
Well, I hope so, but I don't have no idea how that name popped in my head. Well, I do explain why I named it at the end of the book.
Anybody have questions?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have a lot of trouble getting your first book published? A publisher to accept it?
Yeah, not a publisher, an agent. Now, I started writing these books when I was actually still working, and I wrote a couple of them, but I had spent about 10 years to find the right agent. And over the course of that 10 years, I had 4 or 5 agents that didn't work out for one reason or another. One was completely crazy. One was a drunk. But then the last agent I got for the Inside Ring, he sold the book in about 2 days. He was John Grisham's agent. And so, but it took me that long to find the right agent. And then I was lucky that the Morgan Entergren, who runs Grove Press, he likes the books. He's actually a fan of the books. And so I've been, I've been through, I don't know, a dozen editors of Grove, but he's the same president of the company. So yeah, it took me a long time to get the first one published. And my son's he's written a book right now, going through that. And I say, don't know what to tell you, Keith, this is just hard. Everybody writes books. Yes, sir.
Follow up on that. So when you sold your first book, did they make you commit to write a series for them? I've heard that from some other authors.
Yeah. When I sold the first one, it was sold as a 2-book deal. And it just so happened that I had a second book ready. But on this Kay Hamilton series I wrote, it was intended as a standalone, but they offered the contract as make this a series. And I didn't want to do that. And that was a real struggle in that case. So, I mean, if you're trying to sell a book, you better have the next one ready. Or at least how you're going to answer the question of, well, what's the next one going to be? Because like I said, I would have preferred not to have written a series, because the problem with a series is you can't tell every story. The characters constrain you, and what they do constrains you. And so, I have a book that's coming out next July that's published by a different publisher. It's about a guy who forges passports. Well, I couldn't fit that into this DeMarco series. And so anyway, that's what happens with series. So you have to decide if you really want to do it or not. Yeah.
You have a favorite book that you wrote?
A favorite that I wrote? I don't know. It's probably like your kids. It's always it's always the last one that's your favorite. I think my favorite has always been House Secrets for some reason. But, yeah.
Another question.
Yeah.
What's your golf handicap?
Oh God. No. I'm not going to tell you my handicap. I'm going to tell you a story of what happened today. There's a course down here called Ocotillo. Anybody know Ocotillo?
Bingo.
All right. There's 14 holes that got water on them. Well, the guys I'm with, we call it the Tin Cup Award. The guy that gets the most holes in the water, or balls in the water, wins the Tin Cup. I won it this year. 8 balls in the water today on Ocotillo. What's that?
I think I can golf with you.
You can definitely golf with me. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
So a lot of your books are set in D.C. Do you make trips there to familiarize, and how long you spend there, and what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, also my wife's whole family lives back there too. So I go back there occasionally for the books, and whenever you just kind of feel the need to kind of, like you said, just sort of reacquaint yourself with the place, the way it changes over time. But yeah, and I like DC. It's just I like going back there and just visiting. But I've also go for some of the other books. I'll travel like to Boston. One of the books was set in Boston. One down in San Diego, which was kind of a funny story. I got on the Pendleton or the Marine base down there. I got chased off by some master sergeant. I was hanging around the brig. That was really weird. I mean, it's so easy to drive on to Pendleton. What's that?
By choice?
Well, no, I wanted to see the brig for this book. I had the brig was part of the book, and I wanted to see it. What got me about Pendleton, it was so easy to drive on the base. It was nothing like the shipyard where I work. I mean, you can't get onto that base without going through security. It's a lot of classified stuff. Well, Pendleton, I just drove onto the base. Nobody stopped me. And so I drive around, and there's the brig. And so I'm standing outside the brig with my little notebook writing things down. And this guy that looks like a Marine master, he comes out and says, what do you think you're doing here? But anyway. Anything else?
What inspired you to start writing?
I like to read, and the other thing, I mean, the career I used to have, believe it or not, I was doing a lot of writing. It was technical writing. It was writing to to sell things that the Navy had to go do, or to sell a different kind of program or whatever. So I wrote a lot, but what really got me writing is the laptop computer. And that's why there's so many books out here. I was probably in my 30s and I wanted to write a book. I tried typing a book. It was just awful. I mean, for one reason, I mean, you do more rewriting than you do writing. And so I'm trying this book and the stupid whiteout stuff, and you can't print it out easily back. And then someone invents the laptop. God, was that beautiful. I mean, all of a sudden you can write easily. You can write
Cut and
anywhere.
paste.
You can send it to the printer and it prints stuff out for you. But the neatest thing about it is revising the book. You just move stuff around, and and it's so that's what really got me writing, was when whoever invented the laptop. Yeah, well, yeah, autocorrect, yeah. For some, and the auto spell, like privilege. I wrote a book called House Privilege. I can't spell privilege to save my life. Every time I write it, I get this red line underneath it. I don't know why.
You probably want to get that straight if it was the title, though, right?
Probably. Yes, sir.
I had a quick question. Have you incorporated ChatGPT into your life at all?
No. In fact, when you turn on Word today, the very first thing that's come on the Word screen is, would you like Copilot to help you write your story? Nah, not this year. But no, I've never done that.
The reason I ask is I go, a couple times a week. I want to do a deep dive on something, and ChatGPT will give me information. So
Yeah.
I just wondered.
No, I use it more for, like I had to put in a new septic system. Another long story, but I'm trying to buy some drain rock for this thing. In the old days, I mean, I was an engineer. I could go and take a cord and measure this thing and calculate the volume. Well, hell, why do that? You just go, hey, Chat GPT guy, and there's the answer. So I use it that way. But yes, sir. Anything else?
We actually have a few online questions for you, Mike.
Oh.
So one of the questions for you is, how long do you have a plan for this series? Do you know how long you're going to go, how far you want to write, or is it just going organically?
I guess the answer is it'll probably go as long as I can go. As long as I'm having fun doing it, I'll keep doing it. And and I'm in an age right now. I'm not sure my brain will keep working. So, but I would like to keep doing this for another few years if I could.
We have a few golf enthusiasts online as well. So they're wanting to know your favorite courses throughout the States.
Yeah, my least favorite course, you can tell them, is Ocotillo. Normally I play up in Washington State. There's a place up there called Lakeland Village where I almost always play golf, but that's where I usually play. Is that it?
Yeah, that's so far. I'll run back to you if there's
Okay.
questions.
It seems like this would make, if it was done right, such a great cable TV series.
Yeah,
They'd have to get the right cast, but I mean, I'm sure you've sold rights before.
Well, we've sold that other series I wrote. That one was optioned by CBS, and
Is that the Rosarito Beach?
yeah,
and-
Rosarito Beach, and I was almost positive that one was going to make it because it was a big deal. The lady that's the showrunner for CSI is the one that bought the rights for it. And then, I mean, the way Hollywood works is just, it's not, a book is pretty simple. You sell a book to an editor, and it's basically, the editor and his boss, and that's about it. Well, with TV and television, you're looking at, huge dollars to go make pilots and this kind of thing. And so that one, there was some kind of a brouhaha that happened between the CSI lady and the whoever on how to run the series. On the DeMarco books, we've been approached, 3 or 4 times, where you start down a path, but it never quite gets to the point of something happening. And like on the last one, it was, well, this sounds just too much like, and the my reaction to that is you can hardly watch anything that isn't like something else. But so no, it hasn't happened yet. Keep fingers crossed, kind of thing.
I'm curious, where do you get your news? Like,
Most of the time these days, my phone.
I know that's all of us, but I mean, these days news is packaged as entertainment, and it's frustrating to get.
I don't know. I mean, I'll pick up the phone and then run. Just scan the headlines, and but the other thing is, I actually like reading a lot of nonfiction. I mean, and like I love Michael Lewis's books. I mean, his books are just. Do you know who he is? The Blindside guy, and just read a book about making computer chips. It was just because it sounded interesting, and so I do read a lot of nonfiction just because not so much to give me ideas, just to learn about stuff, but that also fits in with the book sometimes.
Sure.
But,
You mentioned reading in Robert B. Parker,
Yeah.
and do you still read much in the way of fiction, crime,
yeah,
crime fiction? Who do
yeah,
you?
I do. I'm always reading a book. I mean, I like John Sanford's books in particular. I've always been a big Sanford fan. Michael Connelly's books. I like the Slow Horses guy. What's his name?
Mick Herron.
Mick Herron. I like his books.
Wow.
And he's a funny guy. I've met him. So yeah, I read a lot of. Right now, I'm reading a book about it's called The Cyclist. And it's about a detective who's kind of an ADT sort of autistic detective. And it's a really, I really enjoy that series. I'm trying to remember who the author is.
Is that Sullivan?
Yes, Tim Sullivan.
Yeah.
Did you?
I'm with you.
Yeah, I really enjoy that series for some reason. I mean, it sounds odd when you say it like that, but it's very good. Yes, sir.
You have a favorite narrator?
Well, it's a guy named Joe Barrett narrates all my books, and I've heard he does a very good job. Now, the reason I say I heard is because I've never listened to the books in audio form. Now, don't tell Joe that. And the reason I don't listen to him is I don't want to hear all the mistakes I've made, and that's all I would be able to hear if I heard it. But Joe Barrett, he's done a good job on the DeMarco books. Yeah.
How do they tend to do abroad? Do you have good foreign sales?
Not really. I mean, the books are over in England. And,
Yeah.
But no. For some reason, Bulgaria buys all my books. I don't know why. I have no idea why I get a contract from Bulgaria every year. Like Obsidian Press in Bulgaria.
Can you give us? Okay, so you mentioned a little bit about the subject matter of next book.
Yeah.
Was there a particular kind of idea that inspired it? You said sometimes it can be quite a small thing.
Let's see, I don't want to offend you. The idea that inspired it was what somebody had posted something about making Gaza a tourist destination, and that's what inspired the next book. Was that little headline thought? I'll just leave it at that. But again, it's mostly a spy sort of book.
Kind of resort on the
the
ocean,
Gaza
kind of,
Strip.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think I know what you mean.
Yeah. Anyway, that's where that came from. Anything else?
Anybody?
Well, thank you so much for coming. And I really, yes, sir.
One last question. You mentioned something about editors, and you've been through many editors and one published. Okay, am I getting it backwards?
Well, I've been published by Doubleday and Penguin and Simon Schuster. A different story there, but most of the books have been published by Grove Atlantic, and the president of Grove Atlantic is a guy named Morgan Entrican. But while I've been with that company, I've probably had like 6 different editors. I mean, good guys, but they take the job for a while and they move on to a different publishing house, that kind of thing. So the same head of the publishing company, but several different editors. And like I said, I've been really very lucky. They've been good people to work with.
Entrican has great taste.
Yeah,
And he likes James Lee Burke a lot. Brought him on to Grove Atlantic.
Well, Morgan's just amazing. Every year he'll have some book. There will be this, National Book Award winner, Pulitzer Prize winner. Every year there's one of those books.
Didn't he
Covenant of Water
was that his?
that was one of Morgan's.
Wasn't Matterhorn by Carl
Matterhorn
Marlantes?
was one of his.
Yep.
Yeah, in fact, I did Morgan came out to Seattle one time, and Carl, what's his last name? The Matterhorn author.
Marlantes?
Marlantes.
Yeah.
And he came out and he was, I guess you'd say, pushing Marlantes' book and mine and a woman who wrote very heavy fiction. And I just felt just overwhelmed. Here's this guy that writes this huge book about Vietnam and this other woman that writes this heavy, and here I am, he's pushing my little DeMarco book. I mean, it's just, but he could really sell a book well. I wish I could talk the way he did.
Yeah, I think that book, The Sympathizer, was his too, right?
Yeah, The Sympathizer,
By
that was from Grove.
Nguyen.
Yeah.
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 Very good. Well, I mean, if there are no more questions, maybe we'll break up and have you sign some
Okay,
books.
well, thank you again so much
Thanks
for
so
coming.
much.
I really appreciate it.
Are you good with just staying here?
Oh, yeah, I don't just.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to call you